Welcome to the Fantasy Football Factory podcast. The NFL season is off and rolling, and we're going to go ahead and start getting you set for week 2. And we're also going to touch base on some of the wild stuff that happened in week 1. I'm your host, Ben Mintz, joined by our other host, Steven Cheah. Mr. Cheah, how are you?
What's up, buddy? Congrats on the big win for the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, you were very excited about that, which you should be. They put a whooping on the Packers, but there's a lot of fantasy impact felt throughout. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, lots of stuff. We're going to get into it, but great win by you guys.
Yeah, 38-3. Saints over Green Bay. You wouldn't have known watching the game which team was homeless. The Saints fighting back from Hurricane Ida. Huge win in Jacksonville, but we're going to keep this a little more to fantasy. Definitely will be mentioning Jameis Winston's 5 touchdown passes. One of the craziest stat lines I've ever seen. What was he, like 14 for 20 for 148 yards and 5 touchdowns with no picks? That's a pretty wild one.
Yeah. It was Jameis is known for wild stat lines. He's gonna throw 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, have 400 yards passing, and then he's gonna have these kind of to use Frank's word, feeble passing output. I think the over under is like 257.5. He's well under 100 of that, but 5 touchdowns, no picks, that counted.
Well, he's a beacon of efficiency.
Well, you gotta say a lot of fantasy is game flow, like how the game plays out, and the Saints having the lead and running the ball. Made it to where they didn't want to throw it. And so often, and we're going to get to this, but when teams get behind and air it out, that's where fantasy goodness, the Matt Stafford garbage time forever. Yeah. So that's kind of part of it. But big win for the Saints. We got a bunch of stuff to get into today. We're going to go over some, we're going to start getting you set for week 2. We're going to look at some pickups. We're also going to kind of react to strong week 1 performances and week 1 and bad week 1 performances. Who you should be panicking on, who you should be holding on, maybe whose values are also inflated after going off yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is all presented by our friends at Miller Lite, the reigning champion of light beers. I mean, I was drinking a couple Miller Lights, watching my teams go. I might go 4-0 this week, which would be
I might too.
Which would be a nice start to the season. But Miller Lite, been around since 1975. It's been the one beer that's brewed for those who love the taste of good beer almost as much as the taste of fantasy victory. And it's the original light beer. It's got only 96 calories, 3.2 grams of carbs, so you can feel good about it all season long. So when the gang's all here and the game is on, reach for the reigning champion of light beers. You can find Miller Lite pretty much anywhere beer is sold. Any bar is going to have it, really. Supermarket, beer dispensary, etc. Or you can go to MillerLite.com/fantasy for delivery options near you. It is Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories, 3.2 grams of 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. And it was Miller time a lot this past week, as you mentioned, for Jameis Winston.
It was. I got to say, lots of Miller time. And thanks again to Miller Lite for sponsoring the Fantasy Football Factory podcast. Well, overall, first thing to touch on, not too bad of an injury week 1. There are a couple we got to get to, though. And it's a shame on the first one. And we're going to talk about Ryan Fitzpatrick for the Washington football team. We were arguing back and forth so much in preseason about, whether that offense could take a step forward. I think it's just a shame that we're not going to get to find out. How long are you hearing he's out?
TBD tonight. We're taping this Monday morning, so he's going to get, reevaluated today. Hip injury, not necessarily what you want to see from your quarterback. Especially
in his late 30s.
Right. When you think hip injury, you think, Dak Prescott warming up or Jameis Winston warming up, thrusting those hips and firing those glutes. That's not a good injury that you want to have for the quarterback position.
It's not typically short term.
Yeah, I would imagine not. So, Taylor Heineke came in relief. If you're in a super flex league, a 12 plus team super flex league, he could be worth a speculative ad. He, can run around. We saw in the game against the Bucs last year in the postseason. Yeah, he played well, rushing for a bit of yards. He came in relief duty this week and wasn't, necessarily a solid fantasy performer by any means, but he has potential to be a bench guy that could be a QB3 that rotates in when your guys have a bye week, assuming he keeps the job. But the Washington quarterbacks just do not stay out. Like we look at last year and, it's, Alex Smith, Kyle Allen, and, everybody getting kind of banged up. So hopefully they can have a little bit of a run with Taylor Heineke, who they just gave, a couple $1 million to before the season started.
Well, the thing with Heineke, he puts a lot of air under the ball. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting watching him. It seems like the balls kind of float and hang up there a little bit, but if you had Ryan Fitzpatrick in a 2-quarterback league and Fitzpatrick was your second starter, I think you have no choice but to go ahead and get him here.
Yeah,
I just in the Superflex league, it's a big mistake to not start 2 quarterbacks. Looking at you out of office in the Barstool league, but you got to get him, and I just hope Fitzpatrick's not out for the year because he say what you will about Ryan Fitzpatrick, makes the NFL and football more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And Washington football team was a team that, myself and I know Kelly in Vegas was really big on like winning the division. Ryan Fitzpatrick certainly is a part of that. They're a team really built around like defense and running the football. But Fitzpatrick was a part of that and helping Terry McLaurin's value. So how do you see his fantasy value being, Terry McLaurin specifically, being impacted by this?
I think it's going to slightly go down. And Antonio Gibson, who you liked a lot, is the 3-down back. See, I wasn't as big on Gibson because McKissick caught so many balls last year, but yesterday McKissick barely got in the game.
Yeah.
So Gibson's going to be the full 3-down back. So I think his value should still be solid. Slightly downgrade grade McLaurin, but I already didn't have him ranked as high as you did. What are your thoughts?
Right. Yes. Same. Fitz has been known for airing it out. You see Fitz magic. You see a couple 300-400 yard games, and you're like, okay, this guy can really do it. Taylor Heineke is just unproven. Not to say he can't do that. We saw that incredible throw and catch with him and McLaurin yesterday. But I would be certainly a little bit more of a seller than a buyer on him right now, or just as opposed to where I was, 2 days ago.
Also want to mention Jerry Jeudy, high ankle sprain in the Denver win over the Giants. Look, I love Judy's talent. I wasn't as big on him in fantasy this year just because with Teddy Bridgewater getting the job, there's a path for Denver to the playoffs, and it's running the ball, being efficient, not turning the ball over, relying on their defense. And that's exactly what they did yesterday in a big win, 27-13 in New York. But I didn't think Jeudy had the most fancy value just because of Bridgewater and the ball control. Cortland Sutton's back. They have Noah Fant. They're going to try to run the ball. A lot of mouths to feed on a team that's probably not going to be the most high scoring anyway.
Yeah, early on in the game, I was watching that. They put up a stat. Teddy Bridgewater had like 9 completions to 9 different receivers, or like 14 completions, like 9 different receivers. He was spreading the ball around, which is not good for fantasy value. Tim Patrick, I would think, gets a slight bump, but is he even startable? Like he's kind of a waiver wire guy that you might add like later in the season. I don't think Denver, even with Cortland Sutton, has like a ton of playable fantasy guys at the receiver position.
Yeah,
Teddy Bridgewater, though, solid QB2 performance.
Yeah, and big win for Denver, for sure, in New York. Okay, so I want to start getting into, first thing I want to touch on is the stuff we're going to talk about what we're right and wrong about.
Yep.
I'm just going to go ahead and just beat everyone to the punch and apologize. This Jalen Hurts thing. Wow. Okay. I'm getting flamed on Twitter by a certain ex-employee of Barstool retweeting my take about Jalen Hurts barely being a top 25 quarterback in fantasy. He went off against Atlanta yesterday. Over 300 yards passing, 62 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns.
27-35 too.
Yeah. I still want to say, though, before we just bury me for this, and I deserve to be buried week 1, Atlanta is awful.
Yes.
They are terrible. I think Jalen Hurts is probably going to be a lot better than top 25. But before we get the anointing oil out on him being the super elite fantasy QB, he played in the dome on a fast track, which benefits him. But more than that, Atlanta could be one of the worst teams in the NFL.
He finished right now. So we're taping this Monday, so we haven't seen, Lamar or Derek Carr tonight. But right now he's QB5. Put up 28.76 fantasy points in standard scoring leagues. It's a pretty nice day from the quarterback. And yeah, he spread around Devontae Smith, who's a guy that, for the record, I was not wrong on. I said would be an awesome pro, but just probably not, I couldn't see a team spending a top 10 pick on a receiver with such a slight frame. He went 10th. He would have went 11th if they didn't pick up 10th, if they didn't trade up. But neither here nor there. He's bursting onto the scene, and it was kind of a theme that we saw this week is the rookie receivers, the top ones. We saw, even Jalen Waddle get in the end zone. Jamar Chase, kind of put on a show with a big touchdown late. Devontae Smith, early with the Eagles, and then he had 4 catches on one of the drives. So big stuff from the receivers. We're seeing this, going back to last year, we saw Justin Jefferson burst on the scene, 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns in his rookie year. We'd never seen that before. Now we got 3 guys, who I'm not saying are going to top that, but, are showing out immediately. It used to be like you'd wait for the
third-year receiver thing was
the third-year receiver. Now it's like, okay, I guess it's the first-year receiver just due to the spread offense, and they're getting more reps early in high school and college, et cetera. So, there might be a lot shorter ramps. That's something something to consider for, waiver stuff or future drafts.
Another guy I want to say I'm sorry on is that Deebo Samuel just going bananas yesterday against Detroit. Look, and there's one thing I missed.
12 targets.
Yeah. Okay, here's something I missed on my analysis on it. I don't think you thought of this either. Ayuk didn't play with Garoppolo yet because Ayuk was a rookie last year and Garoppolo was out. And so Deebo already had a little bit of a chemistry with Garoppolo. Ayuk didn't. I did not think of that until after he went off in this game. But I think it could be a real thing. Garoppolo has not played with Ayuk yet because Ayuk was banged up early last year and then Garoppolo was out. And so, when I analyzed the Niners, I was like, I kind of think Ayuk over Deebo, but they're both going to split and they've got Kittle and they're going to run the ball and whatever. Did not think of that. And I think there was a question on Dear Mr. Fantasy yesterday, which thank y'all all for watching Dear Mr. Fantasy. Great success, 11:30 Eastern every Sunday on the Barstool Sportsbook YouTube channel. I said somebody over Deebo yesterday, and for that, I apologize.
Oof, that's a tough one.
Tough look.
Yeah, the viewers coming to us with their questions, which we're very happy to answer as many as we can. That was very fun that we did that. But yeah, there are some tough ones. One thing I wanted to ask you about is, are you ready to apologize for Najee Harris RB1?
I'm not at all. I'm not at all because I thought that was going to be a brutally tough matchup in Buffalo. What I will apologize for, the receiving part of it didn't go off like I thought. That part didn't look good. But I'm not, dude. Week one is obviously important. We've been waiting on it for 6 months, but let's relax. Let's not hit the panic button just totally yet off week one.
In RB1 that you're comfortable with, Najee Harris, 16 carries, 45 yards, 3 targets, 1 reception, 4 yards, 5.4 fantasy points, and half point PPR.
Maybe not the beginning we were looking for.
Not good.
No, maybe. But at Buffalo, I didn't expect much in that one. That was a tough matchup.
Okay. I mean, I think you expected a little more than 5.4
points. I expected a lot more than 1 catch for 4 yards.
Sure.
I stuck my thing on Najee doing better catching the ball, and that did not happen.
All right, so let's talk about it. A couple other guys that went off week one. Nothing crazy surprising. Kyler Murray, he finished QB1.
How about that throw to Christian Kirk? Dropping the bucket.
Yeah.
Off his back
Our
foot.
producer, Playboy Marty, big Eric Cardinal fan. Good spirits.
I mean, he's one of 3 guys that can make that throw. It's nuts.
Is a great throw. And then Christian Kirk, I think, honestly, the catch was a better catch.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston, QB3, we kind of touched on. What is an underappreciated part of Jameis's game, and I know this because I watched every snap of his for 5 years. He can run a little bit. He's not a fast guy.
He's thinner now. The vegan diet, man. He's not. He was a little overweight.
Oh, he went vegan?
Dude, yeah, he went vegan. He's got LASIK.
Yeah.
He's a new man.
But he carried it 6 times for 37 yards. That's really good from a fantasy perspective for a fantasy quarterback. He's not going to be Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts, but this puts him in like a
Patrick Mahomes kind of. Maybe not quite to Mahomes, but
I would say even higher than that, honestly.
Mahomes had the rushing touchdown, but
yeah. But another guy we saw that was surprising from the quarterback position, Jared Goff.
Yeah, see this one though, I'm not willing to. This is a game flow one where they were down 38-10, and he did rally him back, and I'll give him credit for that. But they're going to be losing a lot. Now that I mentioned it out loud, he'll probably be in a lot of garbage time situations. This year.
Yeah, I mean they were not good to start the game. They did kind of claw back, which was
they covered.
Which was nice.
I had them +10. They covered.
Okay, yeah, but I mean 27 to 35. Or sorry, no, he was 338 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. 3 carries for 14 yards, which is better than you'd expect from Jared Goff. But an overall nice day. What was really interesting was just how much he threw to the running backs. And
Swift and Williams, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, combined they had 16 catches. I mean, both of them with 8 each. Like, that's a lot of real estate. And they finished as RB4 and RB5 so far, with excluding the Monday night game, which is really good. And there was late breaking news, I think at 12:57, that DeAndre Swift was going to not start and not get much work.
And he ended up getting...
They both kind of split. He ended up getting a little bit more. He had 11 carries versus Jamal Williams 9. Williams was a little bit more effective, and they both had 8 catches. So, it's an interesting running back by committee, it looks like, in Detroit, but both of them were successful. And I think the key to that was both of them being able to catch passes, because they will be trailing a lot, but they're not going to be like a Derrick Henry that's going to get out of the game flow and kind of let you down because, he can't really catch the ball.
Well, we talked a lot about the Detroit situation because the receiving core is so bad. That's value for Hawkinson, and now the backs catch passes. Because that receiving core it's a mess, and that's putting it mildly. But great effort by Detroit coming back against San Francisco. Didn't necessarily see the shootout coming there in Detroit that happened.
I did not. I wasn't thinking of a Jimmy G versus Jared Goff battle being in the mid to high 30s. But that's what we got, and that's why you love this game, because any given Sunday, anything can happen. It was a fun Sunday with lots of scoring.
Some other guys I want to touch on that went off. I don't know what it is about week one. Tyreek Hill goes off week one every year. And I know he's one of the top receivers. He's your number one guy. Yeah. But every year on week one, he just goes just crazy. 11 for 197 and a touchdown. What a wild game that was between Cleveland and the Chiefs. Mahomes brought him back. Travis Kelce also with a great game. Everything you'd expect. That was the highest over-under of the week. Ended up 33-29. Thrilling game for KC. And Cleveland, lots of fantasy value running the ball. OBJ, inactive. Yeah. Shea, big anti-OBJ guy.
Big anti-OBJ guy. I believe I bet his under on the season. I forget exactly what that was.
You did. There's no belief. You gave it out.
Yep. Who else? Surprise. So, I mean, this goes back to Thursday night, but Amari Cooper. Wow. I mean, everyone was kind of saying, CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper, who's it going to be? Who's going to take the next step? Amari Cooper, 16 targets, 13 catches, 139 yards, 2 tutties. I mean, I think it's pretty clear who fantasy wide receiver one in Dallas is going to be this year.
Dak and Amari have such a good chemistry.
Yeah.
That's been the thing. And I know that I think there's plenty for CD to eat too. But Amari Cooper and Dak, when they've played together since Amari got traded to Dallas, because Amari, he's kind of like a football player in a track body. He gets nicked up a lot, but man, when he's out there and healthy, him and Dak, it's certainly something. Huge value out of him. Well, also want to mention, no surprise for us, if you listen to this podcast, you probably have Cooper Kupp on one of your teams. Yeah. But Cooper Kupp, as advertised last night, love seeing him catch the deep ball though, because you don't normally think of him working underneath.
It was kind of a coverage bust, but yeah, he was streaking down the middle wide open.
Matthew Stafford adds that element though.
Yes,
and love seeing Cooper Kupp. With the big game. Stafford looked excellent in that matchup. David Montgomery also looked very good yesterday.
Yes, he did. Huge run out of the gate. I think it was like a 40-plus yard run.
Yeah, he hit over 100. And I'll say this, too. As Justin Fields takes over, that's only going to help Montgomery having the threat of a running quarterback. I think that's going to not hurt him either.
Another guy that kind of surprised, Corey Davis.
Yes, 97, 2 touchdowns. I wanted to get in Carolina. You just brought me back.
Okay. Carolina. You're welcome. For everybody that took my favorite play of the day, Robbie Anderson over 55.5 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah,
57-yard touchdown.
Took one play.
One play.
One play. And I want to mention that was exactly, you just brought back what I wanted to talk about. And that was Carolina. Sam Darnold over 250.5 yards. He had 220 and a half.
Yeah.
Then Robbie Anderson caught the long touchdown. And our new Parlay Plus in the Barstool Sportsbook app, I had Carolina, Sam Darnold over, Robbie Anderson over. Hit my first one ever.
There you go.
Boom. The props on the sports book. And really, even though Carolina only scored 19 points, I still thought they looked good. DJ Moore got a lot of balls. They were leading, kind of slowed it down. McCaffrey looked good.
McCaffrey does McCaffrey things, yeah.
Yeah. Corey Davis looked excellent, though. 97 yards, 2 touchdowns. Elijah Moore had a rough debut. 1 catch for -3 yards. maybe, especially after Jamison Crowder being hurt, was not thrilled about that.
Yeah. Here's another one that I want to confront you on. Joe Mixon, who you're not high in, finished with RB2 so far.
29 for 127, 2 touchdowns. Look very good. If he can give in Cincinnati, you saw the play calling yesterday. Granted, they were playing with the lead, but you got to think they're going to try to run more to protect Burrow coming off the knee injury. Last year, they kind of left him out to dry.
Yep.
And
they've improved their offensive line since then.
They have, but they played with the lead yesterday. Big win for them in overtime over the Vikings. But no, Mixon, great game. And then while we're on that, how about Jamar Chase?
Yeah. I think he had like 5 catches for like maybe 101, 103 with the touchdown. I mean, there's the image, I think actually Barstool tweeted this out this morning, where it was Burrow throwing it to Chase.
And the Clemson National Championship game.
Yeah, it's like the exact same play.
Yeah, and then both
that streak, yeah.
The Bayou Bengals have come to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
But that was impressive by Chase.
Yeah, let's talk about some guys we need to start wondering if we need to press the panic button on.
Okay.
So these are guys that potentially, depending on how you view them, these are guys that we rated pretty highly preseason, dating back to a week ago even, and did not come through for us this weekend when we were counting on them. Are these guys that are potentially buy low guys where you would pursue them at maybe a slightly discounted price based on their performance week one? Or are these guys that you are pressing the panic button on and want to be a buyer, want to be a seller of? So let's kind of go through a few of these guys. Zeke Elliott. We'll go chronologically. I mean, 4.9 fantasy points, 11 carries, 33 yards, 2 targets, 2 catches, 6 yards, so 39 total yards, no touchdowns. How do we feel about Zeke Elliott moving forward?
I'm actually not worried about him. I think Dallas doesn't have another playoff team from last year till week 11. Tampa Bay is one of the top run defenses in pro football, top 3. Dallas had Zach Martin out. Dallas abandoned the run. They chunked it in this game. I know Mike McCarthy does like tear it out, but I am not panicking on Zeke. I just think it was a big matchup problem in Tampa.
So for people that don't know, I actually watched the All 22 for the Bucs every week I have for the last, I think this is year 6 or 7. Zeke, I was watching the tape, and there was one run that he had that was an outside run, and he went for about 11 yards. And that one run showed me that he actually did look a little bit lighter, because Zeke is a little bit more of like he's fast. Obviously, all running backs are fast, but he showed a little bit more burst and gallop than I would have thought. And that one play leads me to believe that he is actually a little bit lighter. So I'm actually a big buyer on Zeke now.
Okay.
He does offer that receiving ability. I think you can get him at a discounted price, probably if you're trying to make moves after week 1. But Zeke Elliott, I am actually a buyer on now, even though he only had 4.9 fantasy points.
Well, yeah, just look, man, I say this in college football, it applies to NFL too. You wait a whole offseason for 6 months in anticipation of week 1. Everything you do the first week is going to be analyzed, overanalyzed. People are going to over-freak out. It's still just 1 out of 17 games. Yep. And because of that, I look for bounce backs in week 2 and no panic on Zeke. There are a couple of guys. If target shares look like they're going to be down, that's when I panic.
Okay, so let's talk about someone whose target share might be down. Aaron Jones, what's going on? So he had 3.2 fantasy points, 5 carries for 9 yards, 2 targets, 2 catches for 13 yards.
Not panicking there either. Another game flow issue. I know A.J. Dillon does cut into some of his time, but watched every second of that game. The Saints had a 17-3 lead at half. They just choked out Green Bay with the time of possession, and by the time they had the 2-touchdown lead, Green Bay had to abandon the run. I am not panicking on Aaron Jones either. The A.J. Dillon getting carries I don't love, but you knew that going in. That was part of the deal. So Aaron Rodgers said it after the game yesterday, as bad as it was, and he certainly got embarrassed, but just one game.
Fair. How do we feel about Derrick Henry? So it looks like the Titans might not be that good. If the Titans are not good and they're trailing in games, can you reasonably expect Derrick Henry to be on the field? He did have 3 catches on 4 targets for 19 yards, which is a little bit more than you might expect. 3 catches from Derrick Henry. But he had 17 carries for 58 yards, 9.2 total points. Not the worst output ever, but if you're drafting this guy top 3, you're expecting him to kind of be the workhorse. He's going to score. He's going to get 20 plus carries. He's going to be at 100 yards, etc. Are we sellers on Derrick Henry? I think I might be starting to sell a little Derrick Henry stock.
I'm not yet. And I always think of Henry, his value ramps up as the season goes on. You always think of him in those November, December, cold weather, fancy playoff games. But yesterday, Taylor Lewan got
coworker.
He admitted it though, man. Chandler Jones, 5 sacks. Arizona, that's another game flow one, like you said though. Henry's not the third down back, so if they do get down, his value goes down. But not totally panicking on that either. They got destroyed yesterday in week 1. There's no getting around it.
You're just calling yourself out as you're not for the boys. All those sacks were not on Taylor Lewan.
No, he got benched. I love David Taylor Lewan. Look, he owned it. He said he's going to get better, and he's had a hell of a career. So, I am for the boys. I don't be like that. I like the Titans. I'm not an anti-Tennessee guy. No, and I'm not panicking on Derrick Henry either. Okay?
I would panic a little bit on Derrick Henry just because if the Titans are bad and they do trail, if game flows go like this, which if they are bad, they might, Derrick Henry becomes a lot less dependable week to week just because he does not offer that position versatility that an Alvin Kamara or even an Aaron Jones offers, where if they're trailing games, they're going to catch balls too.
I'll tell you one other thing on Derrick Henry to like. The 6 games in that division that looks pretty rough. Jacksonville, Indy, and Houston being 6 games. I like that part of his future.
That's a great point. Mike Evans. Are we a seller on yet? 6 targets, 3 catches, 24 yards.
The thing with Tampa is you've got 3 elite receivers, elite, and you got Gronk when he's out there, it's still awesome, depending on the workload. So I think that's just part of the deal. There's still going to be tons of value on Evans. He's just going to turn into a guy that's a boomer bust guy.
Yep.
Like he's going to have weeks where he's got 4 for 170 and 2 touchdowns when Brady hits him on deep balls.
Yep.
And he's going to have games where he has 2 catches for 11 yards. And that's part of the price of doing business. You got Antonio Brown back playing at a phenomenal level with the chemistry with Brady. You got Chris Godwin, you got Evans, you got Gronk, you got Ronald Jones, Fournette. You got a team that's going to be leading a lot. There's a lot of mouths to feed, but not panicking on Evans. Just realizing that he's not going to be a 10 to 15 target a week guy. He's going to be a big play threat down the field. He's still going to be good in the red zone.
This is what I've been saying all preseason, and people will ask my opinion on Bucs wide receivers. I said stay away from all of them because even though Godwin was really good this week, Antonio Brown was good this week, Evans could be really good next week.
Brown was the one to get because his value was low.
Brent, correct. But, when you're looking at the top 2, Godwin or Evans, I said just kind of stay away from both because you're not going to be able to count on them week to week to put up consistent fantasy numbers because they are going to put up numbers like this. Like Mike Evans and, my season-long lock of him over 1,500 yards. I'm not worried about that at all. That's going to hit. It's more of week to week, I want to depend on, my number 1 receiver, very high wide receiver 2 to put up, 80 yards and probably a touchdown. And I can't necessarily depend on that from him week to week as that being like a floor. So
it's Boomer. It's almost like he's more of a daily fantasy guy you want because he can like in a big tournament he can go off. And
he could certainly be a wide receiver, overall wide receiver 1 for the week.
Yeah, but it's a Boomer bust type thing. It's not a steady, consistent thing, but still not panicking. There's plenty to go around in Tampa. That offense is going to be awesome. We already know that, and so I mean, not gonna. I got one guy I'm panicking on.
Sure.
Saquon. And I never liked him to start. And I know it was a bad matchup against Denver, but this Giants look, I know Denver has a good D and all that, but the Giants O-line, I'm a Giants O-line thing. I don't believe in Daniel Jones. I didn't like Saquon before the year. I'm not.
I forget who asked in Dear Mr. Fantasy, but somebody asked like bench 1, and it was Saquon, I think Cooper Kupp, and maybe Mike Davis. And I think I advised to actually sit Saquon.
And I said on there, like it's a fallacy in fantasy football. You think, oh, my first round pick, but fantasy's about what's your best lineup this week in this spot.
Yep.
It's about week to week. And so you can't get married to like the draft thing because then it causes mistakes.
Especially, in week 1 when a guy's coming off an injury. Like we knew, he was on the injury report going up to the game. It came out Saturday night that like he's going to play. Okay, that's not what you want to hear from a guy you drafted so high, but you had to know that going in. That's why I wasn't super high on Saquon going in. 10 carries, 26 yards, 3 targets, 1 catch for 1 yard. 3.2 fantasy points, certainly disappointed there. And then one more guy I just want to get to, and you kind of touched on it, Brandon Ayuk. People started this guy, wide receiver 3 or a flex. Donut.
And not just a donut. When Deebo Samuel just went, nuts on the other side.
It's not like they didn't pass the ball. Like they had a ton of passing yards.
Now, I come back to what I said earlier and I repeat it. I didn't think about the Jimmy G, Deebo already having a chemistry and Ayuk not. And I don't think you did either. I'm not blaming anyone. That's just not an angle I realized. And Ayuk was hurt last year to start the year. And so, maybe him and Garoppolo, he might be a buy low for later in the season. But I think you got to just immediately sit him down until he does something.
Absolutely. The 49ers' whole offense has a lot.
Mostert getting hurt was a bummer on your props because he was going to have a huge game. He was an
absolute lock.
Dude, he was going to be a huge game.
He's in the system as Eli Mitchell. I saw him reference on Fox as Elijah Mitchell, but he had 101 rush yards and a touchdown.
Lafayette, Louisiana boy.
Sure. So,
that's
Raheem
how
Mostert,
I knew him. Sorry, I just realized that's how I knew him. Yeah.
Raheem Mostert, the over-under the night before was 8.5 total yards. And he's a receiving back, and we're going against Detroit.
He was going to get it in the first quarter.
It was going to be easy, but the thing about Raheem Mostert, and we said this on our show, was like the concern with him is injuries. He's healthy for week 1. That's true, but he got hurt week 1. There's nothing you can really do about injuries as far as your bets. But yeah, that was a tough one because he would have cleared the 80.5. I think it got boosted to like 96.5, like before the game after Trey Sermon was a surprise scratch, which is interesting because is that going to be the move moving forward? Like we'll talk about that in our waiver wire segment. But I could use someone to talk to after the Raheem Mostert thing. And BetterHelp is an awesome online therapy to promote mental health and well-being. Barstool Sports is proud to announce we've added BetterHelp for all employees as a company-wide benefit, which is awesome. BetterHelp is customized therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Unload the stressors and get back to some unbiased feedback. You'd be pretty surprised at what you might gain for it. See if it is for you. Again, this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/factory. That's BETTERHELP.com/factory. Mental health, such an important thing. I know, not making light of it at all, but fantasy can be stressful, especially if you're in a lot of leagues and stuff. You're following the teams, getting constant updates. Your team might be, projected to win by 5 points, and a big play happens. The other team has a quarterback wide receiver stack, and now you're down. You're projected to lose by 20,
or you can lose the last second. On Monday night.
All that stuff is stressful, but a lot of things are going on in people's lives, and you just got to get right mentally. Get your mentals right.
I'll go even a little farther on that. I love the way our society has evolved on mental health, specifically even for men, and that it used to be 20 years ago, it was like showing weakness or crying or showing, it was like, oh, you got to be a man, tough. Look, the world's tough. We're all dealing with problems. Get the help you deserve with BetterHelp. I think it's a great product, and I'm thrilled that we've added it to our company, and you should check it out with 10% off. Great deal.
Okay, so let's get into one other thing that we got to talk about, and we're taping this on Monday morning. Tuesday is Waiver Wire Day. Are these guys worth ads? There are a couple guys
I've got a few too.
Why don't you kick it off then?
Tony Jones of the Saints, I think, is an ad. And because
he was getting carries
early. He's getting carries. The Saints have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. You saw, granted they played with the lead, but maybe we're going to see a little more restricted Jameis Winston. I mean, he's going to chunk it.
He threw 20 passes.
Yeah, no, it's
that's a game manager script.
There was also a game flow thing with them leading. But the Saints are the offensive line's the strength of this team. And I never liked Lat Murray that much anyway. And I think Jones look good preseason. I think he's worth an ad. He's getting carries because they're going to manage. Alvin Kamara is not a 25, 30 carry a game guy. So I think, and also where I were on the Saints, Juwan Johnson at tight end is all, granted, 2 touchdowns, it's always fluky on that.
3 targets, so he's
But he's a receiver in college at Penn State and Oregon that's moved to tight end. And who was that part is why I like him, is because he's got that athleticism. And you see the high point on that touchdown?
Yes.
No, I think that there's a chance for him when you look around the Saints receiving core, or what receiving core, there's opportunity there for Juwan Johnson. And it's just kind of like a cheat code when you have a guy that's a wide receiver with that tight end eligibility.
This is actually a huge flashback to
Marcus Colston?
2006. Marcus Colston, and do you know why?
Because he was a tight end eligibility his rookie year.
Right.
Yeah,
so in most season longs right now, if you go to, I know Yahoo is what I play on, he's listed as a wide receiver tight end. So you could start him at wide receiver or tight end. Not that you'd want to start him at wide receiver because there are better options. But at tight end, if you have one of the bottom 12 guy, or if you have one of the bottom tight ends in your league, if you had a Zach Ertz or someone like that, this is someone who could be worth an ad just because he does offer that flexibility. The 3 targets does worry me. He had 15.6
but Jameis only threw 20 points. That passes out.
What is good, and you kind of alluded to it, is his size. So Jameis in his career is used to throwing to big receivers with big catch radiuses. They tried to kind of mimic the Lovie Smith offense in Chicago. I know Lovie Smith is a defensive coach, but with who is it? Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall, just 2 really big wide receivers. And then Mike Evans and Mintz and Jackson. So Jameis kind of grew up in football with that, and just really big. Had Kelvin Benjamin too. Yeah. So I think Juwan Johnson has potential. The targets worry me a little bit, but again, he only threw 20 passes.
Yeah,
so that's
3 of the 14 completions went to him.
Right.
If you want to look at it that way.
Yep. And Jameis threw, also to Adam Troutman. So he does look to tight end. So I think Juwan Johnson absolutely is worth an ad this week. One guy I want to talk about who surprised me, Mark Ingram.
Yes.
26 carries, 85 yards and a touchdown. I mean, we know he's not really a receiving back. He had 1 target, no catches, but 14.5 fantasy points. He's available in 80% in 80% of leagues. Certainly the Texans were kind of trying to bleed the clock a little bit. They're playing Jacksonville, who's not a good team, clearly. But I mean, 26 carries is 26 carries. Like if he's going to be right around the 15 to 20 mark each week, that's worth a roster spot.
Yeah, it's surprising because when you were analyzing the Houston running core with Mark Ingram, David Johnson, and Philip Lindsay, and Lindsay probably the 3rd down guy, you figured who the hell knows? They got 3 guys in there, but Ingram clearly is the guy they like. And so, Cheah, you were correct. He is worth an ad.
Yeah, 14.5 fantasy points. And again, he's available in 80% of leagues. He's a guy worth making a waiver claim on for sure.
Oh, I think so too, because fantasy is all opportunity. Period. And if he's getting carries.
Let's talk about the San Francisco running situation.
Let's definitely do that because Kyle Shanahan, any running attack involving a Shanahan is always worth breaking down in fantasy football.
Yep. So Raheem Mostert hurt. We don't know what his timeline is on return. My guess is he was without a helmet and they weren't going to put him back in. If it's minor, like if that game was close, I almost wonder if he would have been put back in because Trey Sermon, who is one of the most popular sleeper candidates, rookie running back out of Ohio State, the Oklahoma transfer,
2,000 yards last year.
Yep. He was a surprise scratch late. So if you were an owner thinking about, who am I going to start, Raheem Mostert or Trey Sermon, the game flow is going to be favorable. And then, you lean Mostert, obviously, if, Trey Sermon's benched. But now there's no Trey Sermon. So is Eli Mitchell, is he worth an ad? He's available in 92% of leagues, 19 carries, 104 yards, and a touchdown.
Yes, I'm going to say he is, and here's why. I think Trey Sermon still could come on second half of the year, and he may get more opportunity here with Mostert being out. But, maybe he's learning the offense. A lot of times with the rookie running backs, maybe his protection's not good. Shanahan runs a pretty complicated offense, and I think that he's a guy you still want Sermon for the second half of the year bad. I mean, I think he could really emerge down the stretch, but I think Elijah Mitchell, is worth the pickup right now. I do.
Yeah, I think you got to add, again,
look at that O-line.
Any Kyle Shanahan, running back, I think you have to do it. We also saw carries from, I think, JaMychal Hasty had a couple. So I don't think you're going to get like a full guy, like a bell cow back. But you're going to get an effective running back who can put up points weekly. I think he's certainly worth a speculative at. I wouldn't blow my budget on Eli Mitchell. He could just kind of be like a 1 week guy.
I think that's fair.
But also monitor Raheem Mostert's situation because he is the starter when he's
directly
available.
Affects Mitchell
directly. Yeah, if he's healthy and to go for this week, Eli Mitchell's not even worth picking up, honestly. Here's one: Philadelphia running back Kenneth Gainwell out of Memphis.
Yeah, catching the ball.
Yeah, but he also got 9 carries, 37 yards, a touchdown. You had, 3 targets, couple catches. Is he worth an ad, do you think? Available in 92% of leagues.
It's close. I need to see more because I just come back to this Atlanta thing with how terrible Atlanta's defense was and Philly was playing with the big lead.
Yeah,
so I'm not going to jump in on this one yet. Even
though this was, Dan Quinn's team and he's fired,
he's still defensive guy.
They're so salary cap strapped, they couldn't really make any adjustments on the defensive end. Like I think they lost both their starting safeties and they just can't add anyone. Matt Ryan's cap hit is like $40-something million and it's going to be the same thing next year. So they're kind of in a tough spot as far as being able to add talent. Atlanta just looked horrendous.
They've been one of the worst teams in pro football.
Yeah. Here's one. So Nyheim Hines. So he's available in 28% of leagues. So he's owned in a lot of leagues, but 9 carries, 34 yards. And here's what he does. He's the third down guy. He just signed an extension. 8 targets, 6 catches, 48 yards. I think in PPR, certainly he's worth an ad.
If he's available in PPR, what people are sleeping during the draft.
Yeah.
He's one of the best PPR guys year in, year out. Going back to NC State, they used him as like an H-back in this kind of hybrid role where he caught a lot of balls in college. And look, Colts gave him pretty good money. He got good money. They obviously view him as part of the future. I know Jonathan Taylor also caught 6 balls yesterday, but I think Hines in PPR, if he's available, hell yeah, you get him. I think half-point PPR, he's rosterable too. And he's kind of one of those guys like, Shay, you talk about your no running back theory. You're dealing with bye weeks and injuries. He's a guy you can stick in your number 2 spot and get you that like 10 points you need. Keep going. Maybe not going to blow it up, but he can get you the points to not kill you either.
Yep. I'll do one more. So Superflex, this is really a Superflex only one, but Tyrod Taylor, he finished as QB 10 yesterday. 23.64 points, went 21 to 33, 291 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then adds that running versatility. He had 4 carries for 40 yards. Is he a guy in a Superflex league that you're going to spend fab on?
No, because I think Jacksonville's defense has allowed at least 24 points. What's that streak now? I mean, it's like crazy. Their defense sucks. And I know Houston, Cooks also looked a lot better than we thought. He had over 100 yards the first half. But I'm going to choose to deal with this more as an anomaly and that Jacksonville's bad. And I got to see more. The thing with Taylor, though, the sneaky rushing value. That's the thing.
He's going to have a high floor because of that.
Yeah, because of that. But I need to see more.
I think if you're in a super flex league and Tyrod Taylor is available, I think you absolutely have to put in a claim for him, assuming it's 12 teams and, quarterbacks are very scarce, just because he is going to offer that high upside where if you're one or even both of your starters are out that week, then you can plug him in and he's going to be a guy that's going to get you double digits points, and it's going to be pretty easy just because he is going to give you probably 40 rushing yards a game.
Yeah, I think it's fair. What'd you think of the rookie quarterbacks yesterday, too? I thought Mac Jones looked awesome considering they only scored 16 points.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an oxymoron, right?
It is, no, but he looked great delivering the ball. I mean, it wasn't his fault they fumbled those 2 times.
It was interesting
to see field goals, though.
Yeah, it was interesting to see how a couple of the top guys, Trey Lance and Justin Fields, got rotated in. I think that hurts the value of Jimmy Garoppolo. If you're in a super flex league and Jimmy Garoppolo is available, like it's tough to be able to start a guy who is probably going to come out around the goal line a lot. So his touchdown value is way, way down.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I expect Fields to be the guy in Chicago in the next week or two. I mean, come on. What are they doing?
Right. Yeah. Matt Nagy is a liar.
I mean, this is a joke. Well, where's Andy Dalton taking you?
Andy Dalton, sneaky next week if you're in a super flex league or 2 quarterback league. Playing Cincinnati. Revenge game.
That's interesting, too, though, because it could be Fields versus Burrow with the Ohio State ties. So either way, we've got a fascinating matchup between – it's the most interested we've been in the Bengals-Bears games in years.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's kind of transition into week 2. Who are some guys that you really like on week 2?
Okay, well, week 2, I'm fascinated by this because the matchup that I can't wait to see, I'm already tailgating on, Shay, is Saints at Carolina week 2. Just fascinating with Jameis and Darnold both in the bounce-back spots. I'm just curious on that front because I know you picked Carolina to sneak in the playoffs.
Yeah.
This one is looks a lot more interesting maybe than it did a week ago.
Yeah, I mean the Saints defense looks like it's very much for real. So
could have some bad Lattimore's out a couple weeks with thumb. They're worried about Marcus Davenport having a significant injury. Those 2 guys are out. There's going to be some fantasy value.
I mean, they held Aaron Rodgers to, one of his worst performances of his career. When was the last time you saw Aaron Rodgers?
15 of 28, 130 yards.
2 picks, no touchdowns. So pretty crazy. I mean, next week has some marquee matchups that are going to be on TV, which is great.
Chiefs-Ravens Sunday night.
Chiefs-Ravens Sunday night in Baltimore. And then, the Monday night game's kind of a bounce-back game, a get-right game.
Green Bay.
Sneaky could be a very big fantasy day if we're seeing the targets and the catches for the Detroit Lions running backs. If we see DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams 8 catches each, is it going to be a similar game flow where they're going to just kind of pile up these garbage points late Monday night and really swing some outcomes of some matches this week? I think that's something to pay attention to.
I like the Bengals guys. I think the Bears pass defense looked rough last night. I could see Jamar Chase and T. Higgins also looked good yesterday. And it seems like in that 3-wide set the Bengals are going with, Boyd's going to be the slot, kind of more reliable, but Higgins and Chase are the down the field guys.
Yep.
So I like them to build on that in Chicago next week.
Yep. A sneaky, interesting fantasy matchup will be San Francisco at Philadelphia. Like, is Jalen Hurts, is he going to prove himself again? Is, Trey Lance going to get a little bit more work? Can Debo replicate what he's going to do? What are we going to see from the 49ers running backs? The Eagles running backs were certainly interesting. We mentioned Kenny Gainwell and Miles Sanders pretty good. So certainly an interesting fantasy matchup there.
Vikings Arizona is interesting to me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I think Arizona, we hadn't touched on it too much, but how good Kyler Murray looked. And then, DeAndre Hopkins. I know you have Murray and Hopkins both on your Barstool team.
Yes.
And how good those guys looked. And, Arizona, they ain't going to be any slower when they play on that fast track in Glendale. I can tell you that. And Minnesota allowed some goodness to the Bengals yesterday. I think the Arizona could score a lot in that game.
2 defenses that I would assume are owned, but probably the top 2 I would think next week are going to be Denver going at Jacksonville, and then the New England Patriots going at the New York Jets. The Jets, Zach Wilson did not look good.
No, he's like, you see flashes. He's mobile. I like the way he can move.
He uncorked one.
Yeah, he had been, but you see flashes, but decision making was very questionable. I agree. And Trevor Lawrence, 3 picks. Boy, that was about as bad of a nightmare. Even though the DJ Shark call did hit, so I was glad to see that.
Yeah, no, that was a great throw, and you do see flashes with him, but then I think he had 4 turnover-worthy balls. Certainly, he's a rookie quarterback, just kind of getting acclimated. It is tough for guys that don't have great supporting cast. The Jaguars had no guys in my top 100 list for this year, so they're not exactly like loaded with talent.
Yeah, the one I'm going to be looking close at. So Tennessee's at Seattle. I want to see how Tannehill and Derrick Henry and AJ in Tennessee was, because you just mentioned it. it was that anomaly week
the
one.
Ole Miss Receivers Bowl, the NWO.
AJ Brown, DK.
Yeah.
But I just want to see if Tennessee can bounce back, though. I really, that's what I'm curious about, because that was a rough week one there. Also, Tennessee can be pretty good on the road usually, though, too.
Yeah, that'll certainly be an interesting. That's in the 425 slot. Dallas against the Chargers should be interesting too.
Hell of a game.
Two really good quarterbacks with Dak going against Justin Herbert. Certainly
How about
a lot
Mike
of fans.
Williams looking good, by the way.
Mike Williams, a little bit. He had a couple drops early that were certainly catchable, but he made up for it with a touchdown at the end. Certainly he's going to be an interesting guy. And then the Cowboys wide receivers, like, can Amari Cooper stay in this wide receiver one trajectory? I mean, it's going to be tough, but Dallas is such a high-powered offense that he's going to have opportunities.
We're going to talk about our friends at Chevrolet. And specifically the Chevrolet Silverado. We got the strongest, most advanced Silverado ever. It is strong, advanced, dependable, and hardworking, like the people who drive them. With a big, bold, and commanding design, this truck turns heads. It's a partner with grit and determination where anything is possible, and Silverado is proud to be a partner in that. Whether it's tailgating, hauling, towing boats, off-roading, moving day, helping out a friend or family member in their time of need, or road tripping, the Chevrolet Silverado is there for you. It's the strongest, most advanced Silverado ever. And Chevrolet, thank you for sponsoring the Fantasy Football Factory podcast.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the Barstool Sports Fantasy League briefly. Let's touch on that.
Let's do that. We're going to every Monday as we do this, we're going to touch on quickly the results from matchups and stuff we saw.
Yep. So this league is publicly viewable, so anybody can see. Again, it's teams from the dozen, which is our trivia show, and we're all going head to head. It's a head to head league. It's Superflex League, half point PPR. Some kind of surprising results. Uptown Balls, which is Glenny and Tommy Smokes and Smitty, which I gave my best draft grade to. It looks like they're gonna win. It's still a little bit up in the air tonight, but it looks like they will be winning. And they have actually won, but only 106 total points, over 30 under the projected. The highest scoring team in the league, the Yak.
No, I mean, the Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins show did not hurt the Yak.
The stack. So we're playing the Misfits, who actually eliminated us from the tournament last week, putting up 155 on them. Just a monster showing. Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, that stack working out. Cooper Kupp, which we were really big on. We even benched Amari Cooper, who was wide receiver one, but Chris Carson, Miles Sanders, and then Jared Goff came through big for us.
I don't see how you can feel any better after your week one. The Honkers off to a good start. Has already wrapped up a win over Team Minahan, and I have Darren Waller tonight. We have Darren Waller, not I. Got to give Coley a shout out. We had some debate on Cousins at Cincy or Wentz versus Seattle. We roll with Kirk Cousins.
Smart.
Had a solid game. We are going to be 1-0, and I'm pumped about that.
Nice. Yeah, it's going to be a fun year, and this is going to be publicly viewable. So, we tweet out the link once in a while from the FFF Pod Twitter. So be sure to follow that if you're interested in the Barstool Fantasy League. And this has been a fun show. I think looking back at the week that was, we had the auction draft or the salary cap draft in our office last Wednesday, the night before the season. Went pretty well, I think.
I thought it went bad. First of all, I want to thank everybody that participated in it in the office, because we asked them to do something they hadn't done before. Mm-hmm. And, I appreciate everybody trusting us on that front. And the control team did an awesome job.
Yep.
Matt Madeline did a phenomenal job, especially late in the draft. We put a premium on getting that thing done in 2 hours, and we did it. And there was a lot of doubt if that could be done. And the feedback we got from Stoolies on the stream, they stayed around. We did good numbers. The salary cap bidding is just more engaging than a snake draft when you're streaming and you're conscious of a product for people watching. And so I heard great feedback on that. Just want to thank everybody. Shay, I thought you did a good job too.
With being as well, of course.
Yeah, we stepped up and did it. Also, great feedback on Dear Mr. Fantasy on Sunday. First show, Playboy Marty. Awesome job with that. That was our first one. Glad we did the trial run Friday. Thought everything was good, and we were overwhelmed with listener questions for that. We're going to do that every week. It's going to be Sunday at 11:30 Eastern, and I know you and I both get tons of messages about start sits. Fire them away to that, and we're going to get to as many of them as we can every week.
Yeah, so just a little peek behind the curtain on how the sausage is made. I tweeted out something I think on Friday just to get some preloaded questions so Marty can make graphics for those. And then he had those, which was great. And we could go through a few of those. We went through kind of our thoughts for the day. The actives, inactives are coming out. So, we start the show in 90 seconds and Zach Moss is ruled out. And, we have things that we're adjusting to. And then Trey Sermon, coming out like as that happens. And we're reacting to it live. But what is so important about that hour is just so many things come in that can affect little decisions you make. And we're going to be there with you every step of the way Sunday at 11:30 to answer your questions. And it's really fun doing we can basically call out the name and we'll put the question up and we'll answer it in real time. So we love the engagement. I think we'll probably cut down on our overall thoughts for the day and just react to everyone because we want to answer as many questions as possible.
Fantasy football is about the listeners too.
Yep.
And one other thing to mention was we've been firing the prop bets on the Barstool Sportsbook, and I had a pretty good day yesterday.
Let's go.
I did. I think I went 4-2. So
let's go.
Pretty happy. Hit the Darnold over, the Robbie Anderson over, DJ Shark over. Lost Chris Carson, who had 91 yards. Lost that one. Had the under on Allen Robinson last night, which was a shade pick, which was actually interesting because I thought Ramsey was going to shadow him, but they moved Ramsey to star.
Ramsey looked incredible last night.
Star role. But still a good pick there. But going to continue firing props. You can bet props for every NFL game all season long on the Barstool Sportsbook. And, I was looking for, actually, this is going to come out after Monday. So regardless, I was going to say a Monday one, but that's not, we're taping on Monday morning, but I'm going to continue firing those. I'm tagging FFF Pod on Twitter and the Barstool Sportsbook, but fun way to follow on the action, even if you don't have fantasy guys going, is betting on these over-unders, whether it's passing, rushing, receiving, or touchdown scoring. And so far, so good on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I didn't have a great day record-wise, but I actually finished up a couple of units just because the Robbie Anderson parlay paid out pretty well. It's plus 325 for over 55.5 receiving and a touchdown. They hit the Bucks money line and Broncos minus 2.5 against the Giants. But the Jameis Winston one killed me. I had the over one interception, and he got smoked by Zadarius Smith, and it was a clean hit. But
even as a Saints fan, I thought it was questionable. Those roughing the passer calls, that we'll spare our fantasy listeners the rants on that
for sure. But this was really fun.
Yeah,
and I'm looking forward to another week of engaging with the listeners and reacting to this stuff live, and then Dear Mr. Fantasy on Sunday, which is when we're going to help you make those final decisions to win the week.
Follow us across all social media at FFF Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And also, we've got some shirts out.
Yes, we've got some shirts out. The Sunday shirts and then the shirts that just say football. Just let everybody know what you're about. Very simple, very plain, very literal. I love those. They're great. They're doing well too. Yeah,
awesome. Well, thank you again to our team. And we've got a great team working with us with Martin and Madeline and Richie helping us out. We're very grateful. And thank you for the support we're getting. And here we go, week 2, Mr. Shea. Let's do this damn thing.
Yep. Let's clock out for today.